Okay, at this time, I'll call the August 10th, 2026 City Council work meeting to order. Need somebody to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
Make a motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 3, proposed budget.
Mr. Mayor and Council, we are bringing the budget discussion back this evening. We had brought it prior, and there was a desire to bring it back to be able to review it a little bit more in depth and to then bring questions back if there were any. And so we're here this evening to answer some of those questions. One of our department heads is going to be running just a little bit late. So, but anyways, just by way of background, we received inputs from the city council department heads, union contract, put a budget model and book together, and that was what was presented to you the other council evening. Nothing has changed in that since that time, but again, just by way of kind of a reminder, the the union contract has a 3% COLA increase for 9 union and 13 non-union members, 40 paid on-call firefighters. Per the union contract, there is an increase of $1,510 per month for the cafeteria contribution for the healthcare benefit, and overall salary and benefits increased by $201,000 over 2026. The law enforcement contract is a 3.9% increase, or $62,000 from the prior contract. City assessor is a 1% or a $500 change. City attorney is a 0% change. Metro INET, which is the joint powers agreement that we have for IT work, is a $6,000 increase. And the audit contract is a $2,000 increase. Those kind of just identify some of the cost drivers. The equipment replacement fund, we have increased that by $40,000 to account for some of the deficiencies that were in that fund, particularly as it related to the fire department. Not a fault of the fire department, but just some of the cost increases we're seeing. We've had to account for that. Street capital fund, we increased by $50,000 every year. The cost of asphalt keeps going up. So we try and offset that with an increase of $50,000. And the park capital fund increases by $10,000 annually as well. You'll see the note in there again. We spoke about this last time. There's a state fire aid contribution of $114,000, and this is an offset with the same revenue amount that comes through for that. So this is budget neutral, doesn't impact the proposed levy, which is 5.8% this year. I know that I sat in on some meetings, and 5.8 is on the lower end of increases out there right now. Not that we're a county, but I think I just saw Dakota County was 19% increase. So costs are going up significantly. You see it when you pull up to the pump. You see it when you pay your electric bill. We see it here as well for some of those costs. And so we try and keep it as low as possible, and keep it as reasonable as possible for the residents. We feel that they're getting a very good value for what they've gotten in the past, and certainly going forward with this proposed budget. So we stand for any questions if you have any. Hopefully we're prepared to answer those.
Well, I'm just going to comment. I scrounged at trying to find something to cut to try to get it under 5%, because I think this is the highest increase we've had in years, decades maybe. And with the fire trucks that are so desperately needed, and I noticed there was nothing in there about a maintenance fund. Am I correct, or did I miss it? I was wondering if we could split the addition of the vehicle fund in half and put half of it in it and start a maintenance fund using that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and council members, we do set aside $50,000 every year for a maintenance. You're talking building maintenance? Yeah. We've identified remember we did a cost
Right,
analysis. Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
the fund I'm talking
Yeah.
about, the costs
And-
to cover some of the stuff that our future needs in that, because things are deteriorating.
Right. We touched on this a little bit on the last meeting. There was, we had them go through a fine-tooth comb of, you know, how old are your boilers, how is your roof, you know, when do things need to be replaced? And they came up with a $2.5 million bill. It's significant.
I know.
So in combination with that, we had a space needs study done. We have, for example, you know, Nate's shop over there. There's very little room to park vehicles and work on vehicles. It can create a dangerous situation there. We have, for the firefighters, we have a decontamination requirement that we need to meet coming up, that we need to retrofit some of the fire stations to accommodate for that. And so we're kind of looking at this whole idea as one. In other words, the 2.5 million would be part of whatever cost would be needed for these space changes that would be required, and that would be part of a bond, if you will, to offset that. You know, we can set aside $100,000, but $100,000 a year is not really going to make much of a dent in a $2.5 million, you know, backlog essentially of deferred maintenance. So yes, it is a concern. We have our eye on that ball, certainly. We're not neglecting that at all. We're certainly not kicking the can down the road. We have been replacing things as they, for example, the fire stations had a couple of HVAC units go out. We've been replacing those things with the dollars on hand. Been managing to do that. If everything blew up tomorrow, you know, we'd have a major problem, but likely that won't happen. You know, when you're dealing with heating, ventilation, air conditioning, they always give you the option of, well, we can fix it, which you might get X amount of time out of it, or you can replace it, and then they give you a price comparison for that. You know, you're talking fixtures like sinks and toilets and things, they're not going to break tomorrow necessarily. But they do have lifespan, and they will need to be replaced at some point or another. So yes, we're definitely concerned about that storm cloud in the future, you might say, and we're planning for that. So the equipment, you know, you said about splitting it or whatever. The equipment is, a few years back, the fire department purchased two engines that were a good deal back then. Very smart financial choice to do back then. Unfortunately, when those two come due for replacement, now you're dealing with today's prices on two of them. So we've staggered that now so that it's not a 2-unit replacement at the same time. It's one and then one in the future, and kind of getting it on that schedule. And that's really what those dollars are for, is preparing for those future expenses in the capital improvement budget, or the plan which produces the budget for the future.
And when is the final vote on this budget?
September 14th is the preliminary vote we would take, and then
And we have one more meeting for it, so if I come up with something, I can bring that to the attention at the next meeting?
you can always do that. Yep.
Okay.
You can go lower, you can't go higher
I
after that
understand.
vote. Yep.
My question is, with the sheriff's budget, has anybody really looked into this on how we could save money with the sheriff? If any negotiations with them at all?
This discussion comes up every year in terms of where they're at and what they're proposing. I know they're not proposing any increase in hours or anything like that.
Right.
You know, I think that discussion needs to be evaluated with the calls, the number of
Right.
calls we're getting, which we seem to be getting an uptick in some calls. Thankfully, some of the serious ones are trending down, but some of the other ones, your thefts or your, you know, assaults or things like that, seem to be trending up, and that generates a call and time, and you know, And then the Nexus plays in there as well, which
Right.
has generated a lot of calls in the past. Thankfully, with the reduced
Amount of people right now.
amount of people, your calls have been
Right.
reduced dramatically, which is good,
Yeah.
because that had a budget impact to us, definitely.
Right. Because I got a printout that I want you to look at, and you go over it on your time. But I'll sit down with you and go over this with ideas. You don't have to look at it now. We can do it after.
Okay.
But, I mean, just for an example, I don't know if everybody remembers when Derek did his report on the budget, the last meeting, that I didn't catch it right away. Tim Miller actually caught it and we talked about it. But Derek stated that East Bethel buys a new squad car every year. So my thought, well, it wasn't my thought, it was Tim's thought. He said that, okay, at the end of the year, why don't we own that car then? Why don't we, if we're buying it, it should come back to us and we can sell that car to somebody else. So this has been going on for who knows how many years. But it's stuff like that, if you look into it, we can probably change things. So that's just one example. So it's just a thought. It's like if we're buying a squad car every year, then we should probably get one back at the end of the year. And then we can sell it for whatever. Somewhere to recoup the money so the taxpayers don't have to pay all this stuff. But there's different ways to look at the budget, that part of it too, you know? There's different things to look at. Just something to go by for negotiations on it. So once you get a chance to read that, get a hold of me, we can talk.
I would assume on that, on a vehicle like that, part of it's depreciation, and then they're getting the cars cheaper too.
Sure, but the
You know.
point is, we're buying it.
Yeah, no,
and
I
we should
agree
get
with
it
you
back
there.
at the end of the year. We could sell it for what we can sell it for.
Yep,
My guess, and it's just a guess at this point, is that they say that a car costs X number of dollars. It probably actually costs more than that, but they're factoring in the amount of money that they would get in auction for that
Right.
vehicle. And
That's what I
police-
mean. I don't know
police
the whole
cars-
point.
Yeah, police cars
Figure it
are
out.
kind of hot. You know, people like
Oh,
them.
yeah.
They generally have bigger motors, or
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
they're fast.
that and they're well maintained.
and they're super well
Right.
maintained.
Exactly.
So they pull a premium, but it's a valuable question, because without hearing directly from them, no, we factored that in, it's only a guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I just figured. We might as well check it and see.
Mike, I got a question on the fire budget here. Why is it we're not showing the 2% money from last year? There's nothing budgeted in there. Why was that blank and this year we're back to it? Yeah, for some reason, we don't have that even listed in 26.
I'm just gonna bring this up so I can find what you're referencing here.
It'd be 128. Yep.
Yep.
So right there,
So
we're-
this is where the transition actually hit somewhere in there, and my assumption was because it doesn't actually hit the city's bank account, that we wouldn't have to account for it. So I took it out of your budget. So that was that whole note then saying, at audit time, I actually have to book this in as an expense out and the revenue in.
right, I agree with that. I was just curious, I didn't see it on the budget sheet there.
You know, so it wasn't on there, so it must not have been brought to my attention, I guess, at that time when the budget went in, so. But
Okay.
when the 2026 is done, when this is actually in there, you'll see a number in there, right
Yep.
there. So for 26, I took it out because, again, it never actually does hit the city's books, so.
No, I know that.
Yep.
It's just for documentation.
You know, but yeah, when the actuals actually come in, it'll show right here, so.
Okay,
Yep. And that'll obviously be a variance to the budget, but there'll also be a variance to the budget on top with the revenue. The revenue comes in.
so
right
that's
here.
why it shows the
Yep, so the revenue doesn't have anything.
fire department at 15.5%.
Yeah, exactly. So if you take that out, if you take out the fire aid, you're back down to 5%. And
Right.
Jeff and I had talked
Okay.
about that. That was one of the key
just what I
things we
wanted to
talked
ask.
about, because it looks a little concerning, right, when you have a 15% increase, but it's because we're adding in kind of it's kind of an accounting entry at the end of the year.
No,
You know, so the fire department budget's actually 5% if you just kind of take that part out. But yeah, so in '26, we didn't budget for it on the revenue side or the expense side. But now, since we know that we have to do an accounting entry basically to put that back in there, we add it back to the budget.
I wanted to ask a question regarding the sheriff. If the sheriff department has the ability to levy, why do all the cities levy for them?
Mr. Mayor and Council, if I understand your question, I don't believe they have the right to levy.
I'm told they do by somebody at the county, but.
The county board establishes the budget for the sheriff. The sheriff can spend his budget however he sees fit. Because he's an independently elected official. He does not levy, you might be referring to the not Fire Protection Council, it's the other council that deals with law enforcement, JLEC. JLEC can levy, because they've gotten, that's a joint law enforcement council. They've gotten permission through the state of Minnesota to do that, and they do levy for special projects. Like, for example, they want to do radios or whatever, replace all the radios. They'll levy for that, and believe it or not, that is significant money. So you'll see that on a public safety line on your property taxes. That's for JLEC. But the sheriff himself, he belongs to JLEC. He's a member of JLEC and pays a due, if you will, but he does not levy himself.
Okay. I was just told that, and so I thought, well, I'm going to bring that up.
Yeah. If he did levy himself, it would take a lot of pressure off the county commissioners. I know that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I guess my other question would be on the planning and zoning part, they're at 35% increase. And I see it's all up in pretty much line item 101.
Yep. So again, a little background, that community development position has been vacant for X amount of years now, and we were slowly funding it by a percentage. Like if the employee was to start in March, we'd prorate the salary. For 2027, it's in there at 100% of the salary. So you're going to see a big increase now in 2027 for planning and zoning. But
Okay. Any other questions?
Information systems.
I guess you're good, Mike, till the next one.
just a reminder then, we will have the preliminary budget at the first September meeting, and then the December meeting, the first December meeting, you can, like Matt had mentioned, you can lower the levy at that point, but you cannot higher it. So whatever you approve in September will be the highest you can set it at. So.
Okay.
So with that, we'll bring this back in September for adoption of the preliminary budget, and we'll also have your sheriff contract on there as well to get that formulated.
Sounds good. Okay, item 4.
This one out of here. Okay, Mr. Mayor and Council, there was kind of some recent calls that folks have been getting from some shooting in neighborhoods, and there was a desire to put the firearm ordinances up on a work session to kind of see what is legal and what isn't legal. And I have the, if I can find it. Bear with me here. Where's our code of conduct? It's under here. Article 4 of our code identifies firearms. It gives a definition, meaning a gun that discharges shot or projectile by means of an explosion, gas, or compressed air. And it says, specifically addresses prohibited use near buildings. No person shall use, fire, or discharge a firearm in the city within 500 feet of any dwelling, house, or commercial or industrial building. A person, however, may use, fire, or discharge a firearm within such distance of a dwelling, house, or commercial industrial building which is owned by that person, or if that person has written consent of the owner of the property to use, fire, or discharge that firearm. So it kind of defines, you know, some of the penalties in here, and but this is really the only part of our code that addresses the use of the firearm. Now, I think every good neighbor would know that there's a reasonable time to discharge a firearm, and there's a not so reasonable time. And if you're discharging a firearm on a continual basis, I think at that point it might get into nuisance. And if you're discharging a firearm because you don't like your neighbor and you want to, you know, create what's the best way to put it? You want to essentially upset them or try and create a scenario that they're uncomfortable with. I think at that point it's definitely a nuisance. So again, when we kind of, I think what brought a lot of this up is the state changed. South of 95 used to be shotgun only. They allow now rifle by decision of the county, and my understanding is our county is not taking a position on what can be used, and so there's that concern on that side of, you know, how far will a rifle travel versus how far will a shotgun, you know, slug travel. We know that shot will travel, you know, 40, 50 yards, but you know, your slugs might travel up to 200 to 300 yards. I mean, they're highly effective methods of, if you're shooting at deer or whatever the case is. You know, most people are discharging a firearm, be it a shotgun or a rifle, within 50 yards of a deer or something like that. Maybe 100 tops, but you're probably running into trees at that point. So I think in this particular instance, the individual was discharging a rifle and was discharging it on a repeated basis, and kind of creating I don't want to use the term firestorm, but a significant issue in his neighborhood. We have families that I've spoken to that don't really want to let their kids out during the day to play when they hear, you know, a firearm going off. We have a range not too far from here. You often hear shots going off there, but I guess when it's your next door neighbor, it can be a crack. It can be pretty loud. So we want to bring this forward, not suggesting a change to policy at this point, unless you guys are the policymakers, you get to decide. But if there's a firearm that's discharged within 500 feet of someone else's dwelling, if a firearm is discharged at somebody, you know, at that point, it's highly recommended that the sheriff be called and that, you know, a police report be written and some investigation done, because it can get very serious, obviously. So I don't know if anyone wants to comment on it, but wanted to kind of, you can see it's just a short little section.
Yeah. My neighbors shoot target practice all the time. They have 20-some acres. They hunt on their property. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm not for restricting any gunfire because I think it would affect them. And hunting hours start really early in the morning for deer hunting, and although they don't go late into the night. I think they'll just have to call the police. Maybe if you put something in the noise ordinance where it's between midnight and 3 or 4 a.m., because that would help with some of the firework complaints that we get too. But I'm not for restricting any firearms. I think that's unconstitutional all the way.
I don't know that I'd ever restrict it, but our ordinance is pretty vague. It could use some addressing. I don't see restricting any weapons. It's vague and could be, redone a little.
One of the challenges, Mr. Mayor and Council, is the penalty, as you'll see here, is a misdemeanor. A traffic ticket's a misdemeanor, so well, it could be a petty misdemeanor, but anyways, it's not a serious violation, for doing this. But I think if you can, if it starts to become a nuisance, that's possibly a different scenario. Then it's not done for recreational purposes necessarily. It's done to literally upset your neighbor, scare their kids or whatever the case is. And that's, I don't know, not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah. Growing up here, gunfire is something you just kind of always hear at random times. If it gets in the case of a nuisance, that's a different situation, but like a lot of people say, they move up here for the country and acreage and everything that comes with it. And one of those can be hearing gunfire. I mean, if it's a nuisance, then I don't know if we would have to deal with it if it came to that level on a case-by-case basis, if it was a grievous.
Yeah, one of the challenges with nuisance is the ability to define nuisance.
Yes.
One person's feeling of nuisance is different than another person's, but.
Well, I think with, in the case of ATVs and dirt bikes, we have something in there that says if it's used continuously for this amount of time, then it can be considered a nuisance. So maybe if we need a little bit of language like that in there, I don't know.
I can research nuisance a little bit more to find out
As it relates to,
how it might relate. Mm-hmm.
and of course, since how we have a gun range, they would probably need to be,
Exempted.
yes.
All right, anything else on that one? Okay, moving on to 5.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and Council, we received a complaint from a neighbor that an advisory member was saying things or doing things that they felt was inappropriate. We don't necessarily want to take that as fact necessarily, but again, it's we don't have any sort of member code of conduct documents at all that might say this is how we would expect you to conduct yourself if you're appointed to a committee or a commission. Some cities have code of conducts for elected officials. Some cities say, well, your code of conduct is your election. Next time you run, the public will determine code of conduct. So we have a couple of examples in here. If I can pull those up. So I'm going to pull up the other one here first. So in this particular one, it's City of Long Lake. Goes into purpose, standards of conduct, goes into how to conduct a meeting, goes into open meeting law, conflicts of interest, which is valuable. Gifts and donations, can't receive those. Disclosure of information, I think, is important. Working with the community, and kind of then breaks out advisory board members are not authorized to make positional statements on behalf of the city council, and care shall be taken by advisory members when expressing a position to accurately clarify whether such a position is that of the individual member or of the board on which the member sits. So they try and touch on it, right? Take a good stab at it, I guess, maybe is a good way to say it. I'll try and find a different one here that, this is for North Oaks Code of Conduct. They get into the council members, mayor, compliance with the law, conflict of interest, prohibitions and data practices, standards of conduct. It says councils and commissions are composed of individuals with a wide variety of backgrounds, personalities, values, opinions, and goals. Despite this diversity, all have chosen to serve public office in order to preserve, protect, and enhance the present and the future of the community. In all cases, this common goal should be acknowledged even as the council and commissions may agree to disagree or on contentious issues. So it's, again, touching on decorum in public places, how to address the mayor or the person running the meeting, and being punctual. Private conversations are essentially public conversations in some cases, whether it's hot mic'd or it's, someone does a data request, they can get access to texts or whatever. It's talking about written notes and text messages, and so there's a lot in this, and this was in your work packet if you've had a chance to review it. And what I think, if I need to summarize it, what we want to.
We never got this packet, part of the packet.
No.
No, all I got is the agenda.
Right.
All we got was the
First sheet.
agenda.
Okay, well, I apologize for that. I don't know if it's on the website or not, but we can certainly send this out for future discussions. But essentially, kind of getting back to complaint, there was a complaint that a commission member said that, they're going to do this or they're going to do that, that they have the ear of the council to do this or, threaten that. And that kind of gets into maybe using your position inappropriately. And so this is why we wanted to bring it. Obviously, if there is a violation of some sort, we can go through a whole process of determining if it's actually true or not. We don't even know if that's true. But there's a due process portion of it that everyone would be able to defend themselves. No, I didn't, or this is why I said it, or whatever the case may be. We've had some commission members come up and blast the council. Okay, they are certainly entitled to freedom of speech. However, it can bring some level of disrepute upon the board, and it can, undermine the board in the community. Should that be something that they can do? That's the policy question, right? Or should they, when on a board or commission, be limited to a decorum of some sort that respects the council as the ultimate decision makers? They're an advisory board to you in this particular situation, and you guys make the ultimate decision. You can choose to go with their advice. You can choose to go a different route. That's totally within the power of the board. So this is the discussion. If you guys want us to bring this back as look deeper into it, or if it's let people say what they want to, and we'll sort it out later. I don't know what the other option is.
Was there a written complaint filled out on this?
I will double check if there, I believe there was.
Cause on that, I think I remember us talking like last year or whenever it was, when you get a written complaint, us on council should probably get a copy of that so we know what we're talking about. Cause otherwise, we don't know. So that's important if you can do that.
Okay, I will double check and make sure.
Thank you.
The individual I'm referring to, some of you know well. And a lot of it is hour-long conversations. So this is why sometimes people want to elaborate, you know, in their conversation. It's like, so we're not necessarily going to say we're going to take it for truth,
Right.
but if there's a document that's out there that we can send to somebody and say, we're not saying you did, we're not saying you didn't, but just review this for future, you know, reference or whatever the case is. When they get appointed to a commission, here's the document, this is the expectation. It doesn't have to be onerous,
Right.
but at least it can give, especially as it relates to gifts, and you can't take gifts, you can't be on the board voting for your own interest, you know,
Right.
conflict of interest type of scenario. So being aware of that is somewhat like, and I'll liken this to when you get elected, the League of Minnesota Cities puts on a first time elected deal, do's and don'ts, right? And it's valuable information because you don't know what you don't know until somebody helps you say, nah, you don't want to go down that road, you'll get in trouble for doing that. So this would be something similar because they don't have a do's and don'ts for commission members when they get appointed. It's, you know, you get appointed and take the seat and you're off and running. So anyways.
I
we
think
can-
it's a good idea to put something in writing, because if somebody's saying that they can influence our votes, that's not good, because nobody can influence me. I vote my heart and the residents.
Well, I think the commissions do influence you in terms of you know, they vote a certain way. You look at the meetings or you watch the meetings online on the decision like the planning makes, you know, planning and zoning. They may influence you. You may agree with them. You may not agree with them. But if they're using that by saying, you better do what I tell you to do, or I'm going to, you know, utilize my power to, you know, to come back against you in a neighborhood relation, you know, scenario, that's not the role and function of that, any board that we have here, I guess,
Right.
is, you know. So, and again, that's the claim. We've heard a lot of wild claims, but whether that's true or not, hypothetically, it should never happen, I guess. But anyways.
I think something just general, maybe a couple pages.
At the
But
most.
we don't need to get into explicit detail of some of this stuff, because I know when I first got on planning many years ago, there wasn't anything. There wasn't anything given to me. It said, show up for the next meeting, sit here, here's your packet.
Right. Good luck.
Yeah. So, you know, some education is great. One thing that can be included is links to the League of Minnesota Cities website for particular, they have particular packets put together on particular roles, particular information, so that if they want to do further research, they certainly can. Here's the education. Here's where you can go for a lot of your answers.
And I will send these out, make sure you get them as well so you can
Yeah.
review them.
Yeah, send them out and we'll
Yeah.
bring this back up at a future work session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
All right, moving on to 6.
This one. Got all of that one. Six is an update on code enforcement activity, short-term rentals / large events, and I have Eric with us here this evening to give us a little more background on one of the cases that he's working on. I believe this is it. Yeah. Can I get the, I'll just show a picture.
in your, thank you, Mayor and Council, for taking this matter up in your workshop here.
Please talk into the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry, I gotta move over here. Again, thank you for taking this matter up in your workshop. The city's received several complaints about a rental activity occurring at 19520 Tri-Oak Circle, and the owner of that site has been renting that space out as a VRBO, using it for hosting large groups through that VRBO. I'm just showing the pictures. They've hosted wedding events at this site, and I just want to share those images with you. There have been a number of complaints from the abutting property owners, and city has sent 2 letters to the owner requesting they cease the operation of renting the property and cease using the property as a commercial venue. First notice sent in May 2026, second notice sent in June, and we did actually post a notice on the door on July 16th, again asking them to cease the operation. Part of our letters also included that if you do need to have a rental license in place before you can operate this type of venue. Not the commercial operation, mind you, but just the renting it as a VRBO type matter. The applicant or the owner only submitted a partial return of their application. Early last week, they did provide set up a time for a final inspection of the site, so that'll happen, I believe, August 20th, and ultimately potentially back before you for that rental license. However, we have not gotten to that point. They have operated illegally, for lack of a better word. Our city attorney is here, and I appreciate him coming here and sharing. But essentially, the staff has exhausted all of its capacity for sending letters, asking. It's really boiled down to Mayor and Council, what would you like us to do next? And our city attorney is here, and I think that's the policy direction we are asking, and the city attorney is asking for. And with that, Mark, I'd convert it over to you.
Sure. So it's my understanding that, a policy decision like this, whether we're going to charge a citizen of the city with an ordinance violation like this, is kind of something that the thought is to have a discussion with the council first. I think in the past, it may have been that the city would go through its exercises that it has of sending out the correspondence and trying to bring the property owner into compliance, and then if they didn't, then it would just be referred to the prosecutor's office to charge out, and then sometimes there's questions about that after the fact. So this is trying to be, or the goal here is to get the direction from the council as a whole, because this is not a theft crime, this isn't a DWI, this is someone who isn't complying with the city ordinances, and of course the goal of the city, well 2 things I'll comment on. One, the city's gonna be complaint oriented, so the city's responding to complaints on something like this. So this has been complaints from the neighbors who have complained about these issues that were just described by Eric. So we're not seeking them out. And then the goal, the attempts have been made to get the property owner into compliance now, and that is at the end of the day, ultimately the goal, to have property owners in compliance with the city ordinance, state statutes, and so forth. As Eric just said, there has been this ongoing violation of the city code, which is a crime. It's a misdemeanor to be in violation of the city code, punishable by up to 90 days in jail, $1,000 fine or both. Oftentimes, the goal of criminal prosecution, more so than having somebody spend time in jail, usually, is to have them come into compliance with the code. So as Eric just described, this individual, this property owner, has been making slow strides towards coming into compliance. One of those things is by going through our processes to apply for a rental application. She submitted that, I believe. She's got to do allow for some inspections to occur and so forth. And then she will potentially be into compliance with regard to having a rental property. And as Eric said, not to have these events, commercial or otherwise, happening. That's another story. So we're sitting at this point where she's close to coming into compliance, doing the things we've asked, but she's not there yet. And of course, we have the issue of past violations. Now, what's also unique about this, and part of what's happened since in the last month or two here, is that as the deputy sheriffs have gone out there to respond to the complaints, they've gathered some information to actually prove that, in fact, the property was being rented by those people that were there, who said, yes, we rented the property, we did it through the VRBO, because that's, of course, obviously, in order to prove this in the court, you have to have, the evidence that the person did, in fact, violate the ordinance, and we have that now. So, I guess it's, again, from a policy decision, it's, does the council want, the next step would be for us to do a formal complaint and charge the individual, and again, seek to have them come further into compliance and so forth. So, I think that's where we're at.
So, Mr. Mayor and Council, in the prior, policy for the city had was when we kind of exhausted all the options, we just turned it over to the attorney, and the attorney would prosecute, and then you would get phone calls and say, why is the city suing me? And folks would be like, we don't know anything about it. So the policy then changed to, once we exhaust all our options, then we bring it to the work session, then you decide, is this something where we need to take it to that next level and prosecute? And if so, we had a couple of options, whether it's abatement we've talked about, or whatever it's, going through the normal prosecution process, or what. So that's why it's here this evening. Just as a side note, not to complicate matters here, but in the Friday update, I identified this property as kind of the, they're going through a rental process, but they're really not renting it the way that our intention of a rental ordinance is. In other words, if you're going to rent your property for 6 months or a year or 5 years or whatever the case is, this is a weekend type of deal, which would fall into the short-term, type of concept, which is standing by. I mean, completed, we're going to bring it for the council to review and potentially approve. So we're kind of thinking the best option, at least in terms of clarity for courts if it gets there, is the rental license is really not applicable in this situation. And if she applies for and gets one, it's still not applicable in this situation. So one, we should probably define a rental license in terms of time. That would apply to 6 months or a year, Short term then is less than 6 months, type of a time frame, or a month or a weekend, or however it wants to be defined. And then at that point, then you can obviously say that she has neither one, but she would need the one that best suited, would be best suited, and then the council gets to decide, okay, do you really want to, given the history on this, do you want to issue a short-term rental license, because your phone's probably going to be ringing off the hook? You can put guardrails around it. There can only be 2.5 people per room, or whatever the deal is. And what happens when there's 10? Your phone's ringing off the hook. So that's kind of the scenario we're in. But
one other thing I'll comment on, from what I understand, from speaking with the law enforcement, is that I believe this particular individual, the property is listed for sale now too, which is, that's great, they're fine, whatever. So if you have a rental situation and then it goes away because the new buyer has no interest in doing that, then this is part of the prosecution question, because then you'd be prosecuting someone who's potentially no longer a resident in that property any longer. So.
Yeah, that's a waste of money, going to prosecute somebody and their house sells. I'm like, maybe we should wait and see. I did want to make a comment on this, because I was informed that after the last planning commission meeting where they discussed this, several houses on that, or properties were vandalized on Tri-Oak. So I just want to bring that up because I feel like there was some kind of a vendetta because it happened either the day or the second day after the last planning commission meeting. I'm like, this is not good.
I don't know that we've heard of that. but
Yeah, the
Maybe there are
paint,
police reports.
mailboxes painted, cars messed up, stuff like that.
I think our first process is to get the ordinance changed so that we can put the limit of time, designate it basically in the ordinance before we can even attack this short-term rental stuff.
I agree.
Otherwise, we don't have any leverage in court, period.
Yeah.
And depending on the timeline of how quickly we get it done and would we be able to use that ordinance on this particular case. It's some legal questions that we'd probably have to get into at some point because you can't retroactively go out back, grandfather laws, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. But that is definitely one issue to look into, and if we want to allow short-term, or are we just reacting to this one problem issue to avoid future problem issues with short-term rentals?
Most cities, I believe, are using it just because of the influx of so many of these popping up now. You go north up the Brainerd Lakes area, they've got a huge problem up there with this. Huge problem. I mean, and anywhere you got a big body of water, it's gonna come. So we need to address the ordinance to start with, period.
Mayor and Council, if I may. So the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on the proposed short-term rental ordinance. Had a number of people that showed up and spoke in favor of it. I think it was a balanced, well-received plan. It certainly looks for ways to advocate for people to have a successful VRBO, a successful short-term rental. A few twists and turns aside, I would speculate that it will be reasonably well received. To the Administrator Look's comments about clarifying the current rental ordinance you have, yes, that's something that should be done in tandem with this to specify that, basically 30 days or less is short-term, 30 days or more is the more traditional rental, which we all kind of understand. However, the case we have now with this address has been in violation for some time. And even if you had your short-term rental license in effect, again, this is speculation, but even if you had your short-term rental license in today, or you had this process in place today, that property would not be in compliance. So I think what staff is maybe looking for is how else can we convey to this individual that you are operating contrary to the current law. And yeah, you've submitted some things, but you're not there yet, and in the meantime, please cease. So I think maybe that's what we're asking for. I realize that there's costs associated with that.
So would you be looking for, say, a drafted letter by the city attorney addressing that if it comes from the city attorney, it may have more teeth?
I have no objection to that, but it's up to, you folks.
And obviously, given the direction, we're happy to do that. Sometimes that does help, certainly, seeing something on letterhead and so forth. We just don't want to get, it's a valid concern that the council would have, is we just don't want it to be letter after letter, and why is Berglund charging us all this money for these letters that seem to be going nowhere? So if we do a letter which is perfectly fine. It does make sense, because it will indicate, and it's true, that our next step is to do what we would call a formal complaint and then bring charges in district court, and individuals will have to come to court. So we just want the council to be aware of that, so that it's seen that, okay, we're taking these steps and this is the next logical step,
I don't think I have an issue with approving one letter to address, and if we can reconvene on what happens after that in a month or so. We'll see what happens.
See what kind of response we get back, I
Yes.
suppose.
So the hou-
Eric, have we passed the 30-day threshold
I'm sorry, Mayor,
for her application, every complete,
No,
complete
she-
application?
her complete application, I believe she completed her paperwork application on or around July 28th. You know, pick a number. She then had to advise the city and coordinate with Nick Schmitz, the building official, to get an inspection. That is now scheduled for the 20th. And then once Dick would write his report, presumably we'd package that up and bring that to you for final approval. But in the meantime, again, that's still, even in a best case scenario, probably a month away.
Nick's gonna bring the fire marshal with him too,
Yes.
right? Okay.
I mean, again, this is not a complete, this is a health, safety, welfare, fire safety versus a commercial inspection type thing. We do have a pretty good checklist, and certainly the building official's been through those many times. But even in the best case scenario, it's a month away. And I believe the city attorney, haven't we already sent her one letter? if I'm not-
We sent her one letter indicating that she needed to get the application in, right?
Right.
And then she complied with that, which is positive. So that's where it sits.
So what is the one thing we can do that has teeth?
It would, from where I sit as a prosecuting attorney, is if the correspondence has been exhausted, would be to do what we call, as I said earlier, a formal complaint, lays out what the charges are, and usually it makes sense in an ordinance violation situation to do that, because it's not, as I said earlier, just a simple theft or a DWI, and I know those are not simple, but in any event, you need a little more explanation of what's going on, citations to the code and so forth. And then what that really does is it forces an individual to come to court in order to respond to, and that's where you have to deal with the issues in court. Well, that brings people out of the comfort of their own home into the courtroom. If they don't show up or they ignore that, then we have the ability to seek a warrant because they didn't come to court, and those kinds of steps. So that's the teeth. And of course, at the end of the day, the ultimate threat and purpose of that is if someone doesn't comply with the ordinance and are convicted of the offense, and they could potentially be fined financially or face jail time.
So the question is, do we have enough to form a formal complaint?
I indicated earlier that with the law enforcement going out there and gathering the information, another thing to keep in mind, but gathering the information of those individuals that they spoke to that were actually renting at the property and identifying them, I believe so, yes.
Let's do it.
I would say let's move forward with the formal complaint.
And send a letter of warning.
Consensus?
And if the house sells, is everything dropped then, or do you continue because the crime was committed, so?
So we as the prosecuting authority always have the decision-making in that regard. And we can certainly talk about this as a larger conversation, but if the house sold, then that person is no longer going to be a concern of violating the ordinance, at least as to that. That may be a cause to decide to dismiss the charges if that made the most sense, or something along those lines. Oftentimes with ordinance violations, if people come into compliance, like I said, that's the goal, that may result in the charges being dismissed because they've come into compliance and we're no longer receiving complaints. But so I can't say that definitively, but we have that ability to do that, yes.
Thanks.
Okay, we gotta cut this off. We've given staff direction, and we'll move forward with that.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
this time I'll close the morning meeting. I'm like, quick recess.
All right, let them in.
They're good.
Sheet right there.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'll call the August 10th, 2026 regular council meeting to order. Please rise if you can for the pledge. Okay, I'm gonna make a quick statement here. There are moments in public service when words feel too small for the weight of our hearts. Today is one of those moments. We gather not to debate policy or pass ordinances, but to honor the life of colleagues, friends, and who have left us too soon. I ask you for a pause with me for a moment of silence to remember their voices in this chamber, the laughter in the hallways, their unwavering commitment to the people we serve. For Tim Miller. Please hold pause. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh. Presentation, recognition and pinning ceremony of firefighter.
Mayor, members of the council, citizens of East Bethel, thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity also to recognize 2 firefighters that are being pinned and graduating from probationary firefighter to firefighter. Today we recognize Peter Boyum and Brandon Alford for completing the rigorous 12-month probationary period. They have proven their skills, their grit, and their dedication to the city of East Bethel. Each of these 2 gentlemen in front of you completed over 140 hours of classroom and hands-on training in the Fire Academy, as well as 40 hours of EMR or more for EMT training. Countless hours of studying and participating in study groups to pass the necessary tests. The City of East Bethel Fire Department also has a probationary book that we require of these candidates, and it teaches them the way that East Bethel Fire Department operates and how we use our equipment and how we serve the public. I would like to congratulate you guys on completing that and being here.
Good evening, members of the council. Just a couple quick words kind of to go over what we're doing here tonight. In a few moments, a family member or a mentor will step forward to pin a badge over your heart. To the casual observer, this is a polished piece of metal, a part of a uniform. But to those who wear it and the community we serve, it's a sacred symbol of life-altering commitment. The badge is shaped like a shield for a reason. Historically, the shield was a warrior's primary tool of protection, used to stand between a threat and those who could not defend themselves. When you pin this badge on today, you are telling the citizens of East Bethel that you are now their shield. This badge carries three distinct weights. The weight of the past, you are wearing the reputation of every firefighter who has come before you in this department. Their sacrifices, their sweat, and their integrity are polished into that metal. Do nothing to tarnish it. The weight of the present, this badge identifies you as a professional. When you step off the rig at a scene, people will look to this badge for hope. It tells them that the help they prayed for has arrived. The weight of the future. By accepting this badge, you promise to be a guardian of the fire service's traditions and a student of its future. You are now part of a lineage that never sleeps. As your family pins this badge today, remember that it is pinned over your heart because that is where the true strength of a firefighter lies. It is not in the gear or the trucks, it is the courage and the character of the person wearing that shield. At this point, we'll have you guys stand at attention, and we'll have your family come forward and pin your badges on your chest.
will do the oath of office. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Peter Brendan,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will serve the citizens
that I will serve the citizens
and firefighters of East Bethel
and firefighters of East Bethel
with honor and integrity,
with honor and integrity,
that I will, in all respects,
that I will, in all respects,
observe the provisions
observe the provisions
of the Constitution of the United States,
of the Constitution of the United States,
the state of Minnesota,
state of Minnesota,
and the city code of East Bethel,
and the city code of East Bethel,
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties of the position assigned to me
the duties of the position assigned to me
to the best of my judgment and abilities,
to the best of my judgment and abilities,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I am going to take this moment. We have a full house tonight. If I can, and this is no disrespect to any citizens, I would like to invite all the East Bethel firefighters that came here to celebrate these gentlemen, if we could, just for a second.
Come on in.
And I know that we have a significant amount of family here. I would also like to thank them for sharing Peter and Brandon with us and allowing them to serve the community as we go forward. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the public forum. I want to remind you when you come up to the mic, speak your name, address, and remind yourself that you have 3 minutes basically to speak, so we can get through everybody. So at that time, entertain, I think it's hard to read the writing, but Shemik Stowell? Stowell.
I'm Channing Stowell. I live over on 227th Lane, just off East Bethel. I've been before this board several times in my capacity. The last 4 years, I've served on the Anoka County Election Integrity Team. And really tonight, I'm more just a mailman distributing some details on the issue of marks of certification on our election equipment. I don't want to debate it. The real details are in the last 4 pages, starting on 13. I just wanted to circulate this document for you. It was highlighted in Liz Collins' more recent documentary, Minnesota Mao. It happens that in April of 2020, both the EAC, the Election Acceptance Commission, notified ESS, the manufacturer of our equipment, that the equipment did not meet federal standards and that the marks of certification, the little stickers on the machines, had to be removed. And they were removed in April of 2027, and to our understanding, they've never been replaced. Now, there's a lot of issues involved with it, and I don't want to discuss them right now, but I did want to deliver this information to you. I think there will be more discussion to come over the next several months, and I wanted you to be informed as to the details on the situation. I'll be glad to answer other questions now or later, but my main point is just to inform you and present you with some details, because I know it will be discussed a lot more in the press. Any questions?
How do we fix it? How do we fix it? How do we make them back into compliance?
How do we?
Making them back into compliance.
We're looking at that right now. There's a lot of legal details, and we've got one member who spent over 1,200 hours looking into and researching this backwards and forwards, and we're in discussions with the county and the Secretary of State now. And there's no resolution yet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lewis?
I know I'm next, but I'll take Stacy's spot and let her go in mine, okay?
Okay.
Mayor, council members, I'm Stacy Miller. I reside at 21443 7th Street. I stand before you tonight to formally express my desire to be appointed to fill Councilman Timothy Miller. My husband, Tim Miller, cared deeply about the community and took his responsibility as a councilman very seriously. He poured his heart, his time, his energy into serving this community. I had the privilege and the honor of standing side by side with him through every meeting and community event. Because of this, I understand the immense responsibility of the office, the challenges our city faces, and the visions he had for the future. His passing has been a tremendous loss to our family and to the city. I am asking to replace him, but no one could ever replace him. But I would be honored to be considered for an appointment to fill the remainder of his term. My goal in stepping forward is not only to honor his memory, but to ensure the continuity for the residents we serve together. I am ready to step into the role immediately with zero learning curve to continue the vital work he started and a strong, dedicated voice for our neighbors. I know this is a significant decision for our council, and I ask your trust, your vote to allow me to serve the community in its capacity. Thank you.
Might as well come up, Kevin.
Okay. Mayor, council members, City Administrator Look, Community Development Director Johnson, and Attorney Berglund, and you folks. Over the course of the past few years, I became a good friend of Tim Miller's. We started working together on the city council, but then it evolved into something more. We both like to play pool, so we tried to have a pool match every week, in the middle of which we would quit and take a break so he could have a cigarette. And so Stacy could play cribbage with us. And that's how we became close friends. I'm aware that, well, first of all, Stacy's too modest to say this, but she's probably the smartest person in this room. She's extremely intelligent. And everything she said is true as far as how they worked as a team on preparation for city council meetings and all that. I've never known a tighter couple. I've been married to my wife, my lovely wife, for over 44 years, and we're not as tight as they are. So, I mean, it was remarkable. Best friends and counselors and all that. What Stacy just asked you to do is customarily granted, just on the face of it. It's considered the right thing to do. Excuse me, I'm having my own moment. There's things that are right and things that are prudent. As she said, she doesn't have a learning curve. She can step right in. It's talking about finishing a 4-month plus term, not running again or anything else. So on the basis of custom, on the basis of the right thing to do, on the basis of humanity, you need to grant her request. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Hermanson.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. We are Aaron and Michelle Hermanson. We are here tonight in support of the Flex building and the conditional use permit for a house of worship being Renovation Church to occupy that building.
We've been residents of East Bethel for 9 years. We love East Bethel. We have raised, expanded our family in East Bethel, and it's been a blessing. But for the duration of those 9 years, we've also been commuting to Blaine to go to church. And what we found at Renovation Church is something that it sounds like this room needs, and that's hope, community connections, and really deep, connections and joy. And so it would be such a privilege to not commute 20 minutes and to have a house of worship here in our city.
Yeah, Michelle and I know the value firsthand, what this church and the impact this church has done in our lives, our media lives, and our families' lives. That we just love to bring that sense of community and joy to East Bethel. So thank you for your time and your consideration.
All right, thank you. Gabriel Hanson.
Gabriel Hanshin, 4434 217th Avenue Northeast. Some of you may remember me from my time on the Planning Commission several years ago. This may seem out of context. I am also here in regards to the conditional use permit for Renovation Church. That being said, I mean, as we say the Pledge of Allegiance, you know, one nation under God, in God we trust. I don't believe it's ever out of place. As they had just spoken about, Renovation Church in Blaine was something that me and my wife had been looking for a long time. Gone around since we were married, looking at different churches, never feeling anywhere that felt like church. It felt like a building. You go in, you worship, you listen to a message, you leave, and that's it. It's like a product you buy. But then we started to attend Renovation. They are so focused and intentional about community and building relationships amongst the church, not just being a building that you come to worship and to do your, you know, good deeds. It is truly what a church should look like. And I believe, you know, as we look around a room full of people, some who are grieving, Stacy, my condolences to you. We need this. We need a place that focuses not just on getting people in to a building, but on sending them out and creating the community here in East Bethel that we strive for, that you're working here for. But I believe that only a church like Renovation can help build. Thank you.
Thank you. Consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, and I'd like to pull item G, please.
G.
Yes.
Anything else needed to be pulled? Somebody will second it?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the amended consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item G.
Item G, it's for the wells, the backup generators for wells 1 and 2. Can you tell me where wells 1 and 2 are?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Wells 1 and 2 service the northern portion of the city. So 241st and 65 area, Whispering Aspen up in that part of the city.
So, because if they were down here off of Viking, I would say shouldn't the developer of Viking Preserve and Capstone and Elevage contribute to the final monies that need to be used? So why wouldn't the developers and the residents pay for that? Why would the rest of the city have to pay for out of, like, I have a well and a septic. If mine goes out, I can't come to the city and say, hey, all taxpayers, come and help me pay, give me $20,000 to refill my well, redo my well, redo my septic. So why can't the people just up there pay, or the developer up there, or whoever? Why is it gonna be this $27,000 left be put on all of the taxpayers?
So wells 3 and 4 had generators put in with that project initially, so those have backup generation already. This portion will be financed through these 3 grants that we applied for and were awarded. The rest of the money will come from our enterprise fund, which is not general fund money. It's not the taxpayers of East Bethel. It's only the water users. So it's an enterprise fund that's paid for by
So it
people.
is only the water?
Correct.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
The whole city on water, not people on well and septic. We'll get needed
Got it,
for that.
all right, thank you, just because people were worried about, hey,
Sure.
why am I paying for that? Okay, thank you.
Thank
With that,
you.
I'll approve item G of, I'll make a motion to approve item G of the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? None being heard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. 7, new business, Planning Commission.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council again. If I move away from the mic, just yell at me again. I kind of drift away, right? So tonight we have 4 items, or 3 items related to an entity known as Final Approach. I'll go through them as reasonably quickly as I can, but they all are intertwined. And just preface all of this by saying the text amendment is the first piece of this request from Final Approach. And if that's something that's generally positive to you, then the next step of the preliminary plat, their site plan, and a conditional use permit would then be in order. And then thirdly would be the aforementioned place of worship within that flex building. So I'll just go through these. Certainly they're independent actions, but that's the basis of all of them. So they do go in order. So I mentioned Final Approach is requesting a zoning text amendment to section 47 of your highway commercial B3 zoning district, which is Appendix A of your code. The proposed amendment would add business flex buildings as a conditional use within the B3 highway commercial district, subject to tenant use limitations, prohibited uses, and the definition of a business flex building. So this is the specific language you see on your screen. Certainly this was in your packet. But what they're looking to build is a multi-tenant building that would be able to house permitted uses in your industrial zone and permitted uses in your B3 district, as well as conditional uses in your industrial zone and conditional uses in your B3 district. So the goal fundamentally is for employment-based investment in operations there. However, following more to a form-based zoning where it's more important, I shouldn't say more important, but it's important about how the building looks on the exterior, how does it fit into that neighborhood, and does it cause, and would it cause anything incompatible with noise, odors, outside storage. So that's the basis of what a flex building essentially is trying to accomplish. Again, that's just the language of it, but let's just see what in this case, the applicant is proposing a building, and this is what that flex building would essentially look like. It's a 21,000 square foot building with potentially four distinct entrances, but how they configure the building internally would probably be up to further discussion by the applicant and the tenants they could receive. So that is what a flex building is generally all about. Your current code does not have that capacity now, so that is why they're asking for that to be added. In effect, it's allowing the industrial zone within your B3 district only in this building. And on the screen, you have where that zoning is. Again, that's B3 as shown. That neighborhood already is a multi-dimensional or multi-different uses of space. Again, the proposed uses here for that building and how that text amendment would offer that. But you do have industrial uses nearby. You have a mixed use with the apartment complex, and the remaining are commercial. None of these operators in this district, even in the industrial zone, are heavy manufacturers, so to speak. I mean, these are all essentially light industrial and largely compatible in how they function. The same area is also zoned, from your land use planning, mixed use. So it's looking to find a balance between commercial, industrial, potentially even different kinds of commercial space. So that's your comp plan zoning. But a text amendment, it's important to understand, also applies in not just in one space. It applies at all your B3 districts. And in your city, in East Bethel, you have this area largely south of Viking, south of by the Holiday or the Circle K and the Quick Trip. You have this space further north near Minnesota Farms, and then the land, I believe this is Sims on this scale. So you have a smattering of these parcels across the city, but in terms of, they're all within your commercial corridor, which you have identified as roughly within 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet of your 65 corridor. So that's kind of the basis of that. Planning Commission held a public hearing on July 28th, reviewed the proposed amendment, considered staff reports and exhibits, certainly received public testimony, and ultimately adopted a resolution of support, which is in your packet, PC 26-11, recommending approval. The amendment, just to reiterate a little bit, the amendment would maintain a conditional use permit for a building such as this. So a multi-tenant building could not just show up and a developer could not just show up and propose a building like this. You would still have a site plan review, and the building itself operates and can only be placed by a conditional use permit. So you would always have another way to review the applicant before they could build a structure like this, or how the site plan works, or their potential tenant mix. The second piece of that is when a building were to go in, some of the applicants, as you'll hear tonight, must then receive an additional conditional use permit, in this case, a place of worship, under your B3 code. So in a lot of ways, this does offer a lot of flexibility to the landowner in your B3 district. However, I think it provides the city with a pretty strong capacity to review each site on a case-by-case basis, again, with the goal of preventing noise, incompatibility, and other things that may affect the neighborhood. Last thing I'd add is your B3 district can already enable or permit uses that may well exceed a neighborhood impact such compared to a building like this. For example, a Holiday, a Quick Trip, which is a B3 district, certainly has a lot of traffic, certainly has a lot of light, certainly has a lot of noise, whereas this, a flex building is intended to be more employment-based and not have that high commercial capacity. So again, the Planning Commission did make a recommendation for it. Certainly staff also believes that the proposed amendment is reasonable and provides a controlled zoning pathway for modern commercial employment-oriented building. The amendment preserves a B3 zoning framework, maintains city review authority throughout the process, and includes limitations to prevent incompatible uses. So ultimately, staff would also recommend approval, and in your packet, there's city ordinance, and this is again done by ordinance. City ordinance 2026-02, and that language, as I've shown, is embedded in this. The rest is, a lot of legalese. No offense, our city attorney, but one thing I did want to note in this resolution is section 4, is that this ordinance, like all ordinances, would ultimately have to be published for it to come into effect. We would withhold the publishing until the related development would potentially be fully approved, which we'll talk about next, the development agreement signed, the plat done, and once all those securitors are in place, these would then be published. So a lot of cities do approve a development with a rezoning, but if the rezoning doesn't go through or isn't triggered, they'll approve a project with a building, a development with a rezoning, but if they don't do the development, the rezoning doesn't go into effect. So one begets the other. So with that, that's a lot, and that is our recommendation to you all to adopt ordinance 2026-02.
I have a suggestion. Can we take off the cannabis stuff off the list? And if it means, even if it means changing an ordinance to limit the city of East Bethel to one cannabis place, because we already have that. We don't need any more.
I'd certainly defer to the city attorney about how that could be. I do know that the cannabis elements and the limitations would be carried through to this building. This building would not be granted anything additional other than is already limited by statute.
Because cannabis is on its first list that says it's approved, and I'm like, no.
It is approved in your B3 district.
So I think what he's saying is that this type of building could still have in it uses that are already approved for that type of in that district. It doesn't mean that there can be any more. The number of cannabis retail operations and so forth is limited by the state statute by population and so forth. So this won't change that or add additional cannabis businesses, but that is already a permitted use within B3.
But can we prevent any cannabis
in these
uses in those buildings? Can we? Can we create an ordinance that says we can only have one in the city, in which we kind of already have? Can we?
We have an ordinance that says we can have 2.
Yeah, I believe one of the conditions is 1,000-foot radius. Would this flex building be within the 1,000-foot radius?
Remember the flex building ordinance, if adopted, would apply in all your B3 districts. So when an applicant would come in, you could do that radius at that time. If this were in effect and they built their building and I'm certainly deferring to anyone here. So, and they came in and wanted to go into one of these shops or one of these spaces. At that point, we'd have to do the analysis and say, where are they and where are the current ones? And is there a license available, if I'm not mistaken?
But if a church were in there, a cannabis place wouldn't be allowed, right?
Whatever the statute or the ordinance would preclude it, right?
From the geographic limitation, yeah.
So if the council wanted to suggest a further amendment to the prohibited uses, I don't know if you could.
If the council wanted to further limit the uses of a flex building, because this is the first time a flex building is going to be approved, if you wanted to manage it down to that, you could do that. So you could say flex building is approved, but since it's a new thing, despite the fact that having met all the other regulations and all the other ordinances, a cannabis retail establishment could be in that B3 zone, you can say it can't be in a flex building in a B3 zone.
Let's do that. It cannot be in a flex building.
Yeah, so it would be, we'd have to tweak the language on this a little bit, but if that's what the council wants, that can be done.
I mean, that's my opinion. It's up to you guys, but my opinion is stop as much of that as I can out here.
I agree with what you're saying, for sure on that, with the flex buildings. I got a question too with the flex buildings now. Do we have a distance that they're gonna be off the main highway, like a half a mile or whatever it is?
No, there's only, so it would only be applicable in your B3 district. So which, in your B3 district, most of these are within that range.
Within the range?
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of them are, you know, concrete buildings and stuff like that, where this is a steel frame building. And I'm just wondering, my opinion is that if we mix them in with these other buildings that are businesses that have spent millions of dollars building these buildings, how is that gonna look to them or the residents? You know what I mean? It's like, they're a nice looking building, the flex buildings, but.
Well, this is one design from this applicant, for example. And in reviewing it, they're in compliance with your city's architectural standards.
Okay.
Your architectural standards don't stipulate concrete tip-up building. It stipulates
So the front elevation would be,
the top one, and
the
that
top.
would face 65.
right, okay.
Yep.
So the sides could be steel,
Well, the applicant,
depending on,
well, that is, I mean, certainly the applicant is present, and they could talk about the materials, but they are, they did bring material samples to the planning commission, and I believe they found those to be quite favorable. Those are wood composite, and the structural steel side, the gray areas were textured. It's not the traditional, maybe that
right,
we all might know a pole building to be, or
right,
a
that's what I mean, that's
steel
came a
building.
long ways.
Yeah, I don't think that's, again, I'm not an architect, I mean, that's a flavor thing, right?
Right.
But I think it certainly met the intent of the amount of glazing, the glass, the eyebrows, the overhangs. Certainly it's an attractive looking
Well,
building.
it's a nice looking
you know.
building, definitely.
But your code does not stipulate concrete.
Okay. That's all I got.
For the sake of, and to Councilmember Urkel's comment and maybe what you folks might desire, there is a timing question, at least in terms of working with this applicant. If there was an amendment to the prohibited uses in your ordinance, where it says prohibited uses, I think we'd have to wordsmith that a little bit, but would you be comfortable with passing in this ordinance with allowing staff to fill in that blank, basically prohibiting cannabis-related businesses?
Yes, in fact,
Is it-
if it's resolution 2026-37, I was going to say that with the condition that cannabis use be prohibited.
Would Mr. Berglund, is that okay from your standpoint if we do that, or?
Yes.
Okay. We would try to keep it simple and straightforward, but if you're comfortable with that, then what we have before you would be ordinance 2026-02, with that change relating to prohibiting cannabis-related businesses.
So I have to say ordinance 2026-02?
2026-02.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2026-02 with the condition that staff modifies prohibited use to include cannabis businesses.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? None being heard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Got your next one there, Eric?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor, I was waiting for, I thought you were, yes, thank you again. Again, I talked about a lot of these things are interlacing, so I'll spare you all the Planning Commission 3-hour marathon, but you'll see some similar maps. Again, final approach development, have requested review of a preliminary plat, final plat, and conditional use permit and site plan review for their plat entitled Final Approach East Bethel Edition, located east of Ulysses Street, west of Highway 65. The proposal ultimately includes approximately 21,600 square foot multi-tenant business flex building. Now, again, you've approved the philosophy of the text amendment. Together, parking, loading areas, internal circulation, water, sewer extensions, grading, stormwater facilities, et cetera. Again, the property is zoned B3, highway commercial, mixed use under the comprehensive plan, and located within the city's metropolitan urban service area. Planning Commission did review this application. The submitted plans, reports, engineering exhibits, public testimony at July 28th meeting, and recommended adoption of the proposed plan in their resolution PC 26-12. And this is the proposed site. You see the building that I showed the elevations of would sit in this location, just east of Ulysses Street. The developer would be required to extend Ulysses Street down here, south of the two apartment complexes, an appropriate cul-de-sac. There are water and sewer utilities that would have to be extended south from Ulysses and 185th. These would be their expense. The site has adequate parking. They have adequate stormwater facilities located south of their parking lot. There's also some stormwater facilities just adjacent to the cul-de-sac. City engineers reviewed these, the submission from a plat appropriateness and ability to achieve all the city's rules. Certainly there'll always be some tweaks and adjustments, but found that to be favorable. From a traffic impact standpoint, this applicant did bring a traffic analysis. It was reviewed by the city, and there were no anticipated level of service impacts at 183rd Holiday and its interface with Highway 65. The remaining sites to the west will remain in an outlot A. Certainly the developer has thoughts to do some building in the high ground or the non-wetland areas, potentially here, and then over on the western side of the site. Most of Outlot A is encumbered by wetlands. There is a county drainage ditch that lies to the south. But as far as the site conditions go, the primary goal is this upper right-hand corner is positive. Ultimately, if this were approved, preparation development agreement addressing the extension of utilities from Ulysses Street, water and sewer extensions, drainage and stormwater elements would have to be dealt with, financial securities, inspection costs, what have you. We would bring that development agreement back to you for final approval once that were ultimately negotiated and set up. But again, all of those costs largely remain with the developer. The parking, let's see if I can, too many of the same maps, I'm sorry. Let's see if I can zoom in here. We talked about the CUP and their building and what they may or may not use, and no cannabis operations. But they did have adequate parking. I believe 194 stalls is on the field, and that can be probably reduced to some extent based on any final design. We want to make sure there's traffic circulation for fire trucks. The fire chief has reviewed this, and I believe they've come into agreement with the engineer on the turning radiuses. Their final landscaping, lighting, signage, trash screening, and rooftop equipment screening and building elevations all are in compliance with the city's requirements, full cutoff lighting, landscaping, what have you. The applicant did accommodate some endangered plants in this area here. So they did shift some of these things to the west for the stormwater. So, and there will need to be an easement provided to the city from this property owner, which would be the applicant's responsibility to secure, because this curve just nicks this corner a little bit. But I believe they've addressed that, and ultimately that'll need to be conveyed to the city in appropriate roadway easement. The city, the resolution ultimately, if you consider that, would require additional traffic analysis or corrective improvements if future tenants or operational changes created congestion, queuing, or unsafe turning movements or emergency access problems. And any future building expansion or meaningful changes there would have to come back to the city potentially for site plan review or an amended conditional use permit. The site does show a place for a potential future expansion. At this point, there'll just be sod or grass, some landscaping, what have you, but something to, I think that's in their vision. So I mentioned the Planning Commission did approve this preliminary plat and final plat, and the site plan and the conditional use permit for that flex building. Staff, I think, also has support of this for the preliminary plat, final plat. It provides an acceptable subdivision framework that the proposed business flex building can easily satisfy the requirements of the conditional use permit standards, and the site provides adequate physical framework for development. So if you think this is of value, or if you certainly have questions, staff would recommend adoption of resolution 2026-37, approving the preliminary plat, final plat, conditional use permit, and site plan, subject to the findings and conditions contained in that resolution. So.
Okay, my question
Yeah.
is the traffic going to be coming down from Jackson or from Viking? Where are they going to turn in to get into there? They're not coming off at 65 to get in there, right?
Councilmember Urkel, no, they don't have any permits from MnDOT. I suspect they'd love to have them, but it's probably highly unlikely that MnDOT would grant an access. But they're going to largely come in from 187th by the Holiday or Circle K, whatever they're now, and then south on Ulysses down to the cul-de-sac.
Okay. Do they have access to Viking too? I mean, can they come off of Viking up there too somewhere? Or is it just going to be 187th?
It's 100, well, I think they can connect.
Yes, there's access from Viking.
I can't see it very good from here.
But I would argue most of it's going to come from Highway 65.
Buchanan goes north, curves to the west, turns in 189th, and you can either access Jackson right from there or turn to the north and go up to Viking.
Yeah, they're definitely gonna need a traffic analysis, because if there's gonna be considerable more traffic, then, because that's where the theater is, that's where Holiday is, and then a lot more traffic, they might need to extend that turn lane or something.
Yes, Mayor and Council, they did provide a traffic analysis, and the city operates on a level of service capacity, basically looking to not trigger a level of service, level D, A being the best, and E or something worse than that and that really relates to queuing time. And that queuing time is not anticipated to be affected at the closest point of connection to the state trunk highway. But there is a caveat in the resolution that says, should things or conditions change that we can justifiably attribute to their uses, that you would have the ability to go back and address that. Which maybe goes back to my earlier point or the earlier analysis, that I don't know, if it's a McDonald's here, I'm not saying it would go in or anything like that, but that would be far more traffic demand, that would be a permitted use, than this proposed use. Yes, they would probably have some improvements to make at 65, but in terms of its traffic down Ulysses and at 185th, or noise or light, it's probably a far more passive use.
Not that, I'm just thinking of Sundays with all the traffic coming south,
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
then the church on Sundays, and I'm like, the Holiday gets busy on Sundays.
Well, we'll talk about that potentially at the next phase of this conversation.
Yeah.
You make a good point.
Okay.
I got a question too, like, okay, you were saying the roads might have to be extended, the sewer and water also. Is
Yeah.
the developer paying for that?
Yes, that is all at the expense of the developer.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2026-37, approving the preliminary plat, final plat, conditional use permit, and site plan review subject to the findings and conditions contained in the proposed city council resolution.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? None being heard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. Item 3.
So, Councilmember Urkel, if I don't touch on church traffic, you let me know. Okay. Again, the same sites and conditions we've talked about before. Final Approach Development has requested a conditional use permit to allow Renovation Church to occupy approximately 15,000 square feet of this proposed 21,600 square foot business flex building. The main assembly area is anticipated to accommodate up to 400 seats. Again, the property is zoned B3, where a place of worship is allowed by conditional use permit. That site is again guided mixed use under the comprehensive plan. Planning Commission held a public hearing and found the application to be favorable and adopted their resolution PC 26-13, recommending approval of this proposal subject to conditions. Let's see. I'm going to zoom in on this one because it's just the easiest. The principal issues in this case of a place of worship in this building are parking, traffic circulation, emergency access, and compatibility with other buildings, tenants, or certainly the area. The city requires 1 parking space for every 3 seats of a place of worship. Thus, a 400-seat assembly area requires 134 parking spaces. The applicant certainly has enough parking capacity at the site at 195 spaces. However, at least when we were reviewing this plan originally, 34 spaces were shown in the truck maneuvering area, which are just to the west of these drive-in doors and the loading dock. The applicant has made some adjustments to get rid of those directly, and the applicant or the renovation church would be the tenant, would be required to, if they needed to, put in some temporary parking, banding, or signage there if they wanted to use those sites. But it would not be permanently striped, so as to make sure that other tenants at this building could use that. Renovation Church is proposing to use 3/4 of the building, so how they all fit together will be the responsibility of the applicant. Again, the city's goal is a quality building, a quality neighbor, and how they interrelate through the streets, and it's the owner's responsibility to make sure they all get along and work together, which I'm sure is always so easy. So, anyway. The proposed conditions in your resolution, construction of the entire Business Flex building, so they couldn't parse out a different section of the building or couldn't only build part of the building. They would have to build the entire complete building. Approval of final floor plans, occupant load calculations, parking calculations, fire lane delineations would all have to be, again, re-verified prior to the issuance of a building permit. This drawing does show the fire truck turning movements, and the fire chief and the applicant's engineer has sorted those things out appropriately. But we will verify. The coordination of the church and tenant operations so parking and loading conflicts do not occur is important. Implementation of any additional traffic control measures required by the city, including licensed law enforcement, traffic control at the applicant's expense. And what I mean by that is on a Sunday, if you do have a lot of traffic, that if the church or the owner or the applicant is trying to do some kind of site traffic management with an individual out there with cones or flags, they would not be allowed to do that in the public right away. If they want to do that in their parking lot, I guess we have no objection to it. But the part that would be outside of that and in the public right away, if it were needed, they would have to engage with the sheriff's office and pay for that independently. Compliance with all building, fire, accessibility, utility, and occupancy requirements. Again, that's part of the building construction process. We don't know the final layouts inside the building yet, but that will relate to total occupancy, and the building official will sort that out. And ultimately, city would review any separate outdoor event requests, temporary promotional signs, or material changes to seating, parking, circulation, or any operations. Ultimately, the Planning Commission, again, supported the proposal in terms of its compatibility with the adjacent uses. You have a robust, very busy area there, but with the church, like most churches, they operate on Sunday. So many of these sites won't be operating full capacity at that time. So you'll have a probably less of an impact on a Sunday versus like on a Tuesday morning, for example. The applicant and their tenant, Renovation Church, does not expect to have significant daytime uses during the week. Maybe they'll have some classes or the like. Maybe some minor office presence, but they're not proposing any major operations or services during the week. They're proposing 2 services on Sunday, if I remember, 9 or 10:30, or maybe it was 10 or 11:30, I forget. It is in the report. So again, they should fit in nicely to the building. They should fit in nicely to the area, and staff would mirror the recommendation of the Planning Commission to approve resolution number 2026-38. Stand for any questions.
Make a motion to approve resolution number 2026-38, approving the conditional use permit, subject to the findings and conditions contained in the resolution.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? None being heard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Item 4.
All right. Okay, Mayor and Council, I forget when we chatted about this, maybe it was a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, where the city council would potentially consider some amendments to your minor subdivision or administrative subdivision rules. And if you recall, it was about a simple lot split. And your current ordinance basically prohibits a simple lot split if it happens once, but there is no look-back period. If you did it once in 1942 or 1987, then you couldn't do a simple lot split again. The challenge with that is we, as staff, and probably many owners, don't have a deep history of that. And so if they do have some lot splits they'd like to take care of, we've talked about doing a 10-year look back. 10 years being the thought that there's enough local knowledge or history, county data might be up to speed about property ownership changes, and that we can have a legitimate conversation about did it occur recently. The concern, however, is does it circumvent the subdivision ordinance? So the Planning Commission talked about it, and they did support the language shown on the screen, and it's in your packet, to allow a 10-year look-back period. It does not change the requirements of the lot size. It does not change the requirements of the land use. It does not change lot size requirements or frontage requirements or wetland requirements. Really all it does is give somebody a one-time ability to split their lot. If they wanted to do it before the end of the 10-year period, well, then they could go through a traditional subdivision process under Chapter 66. Certainly it's more expensive, but really that's what you're doing in this case. Second half of their conversation that you recall and you folks had was cleaning up the language that sought to or had a conflict in who gets to make the approval of the subdivision. In this case, the Planning Commission took this language up where it's responsibility of staff to provide a staff report to make a recommendation to you, but ultimately the decision falls and lies with the council. So that is the clarification that we've done. And so those are the two things.
I have a question on lot splits, and I didn't see it in here, but that doesn't mean I may not have missed it. Is there any size limitations? I mean, I think it's for rural, it's got to be 2 acres, but if you have 50 acres, can you split off a 2 if you split off and do a 2 acre, you have to wait 10 years to do another 2 acre, or
Yes, ma'am.
on that 50 acres?
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, if they have 50 acres, could you make it so it has to be a minimum of a tenth of the size of their lot? I mean, I know this isn't something that's in an ordinance right now, but it's just something that's been going through my mind because I'm not liking to see all these little lots. And then how is it a developer can come in and split up a lot, a property into all these different things, but a person can only split it once?
I got you, Mayor and Council. I think I'll take a stab at it, but I'll defer to the city attorney. But in this case, if somebody has a 50-acre parcel and they wanted to split off 2 acres, you know, for, it doesn't matter reason why, but let's just say it's for their child, or their family, they could do that. And this is what the minor subdivision would facilitate. But once they do that, they can't do it again. Not on that remaining 48-acre parcel. You know, they could go through a subdivision process under Chapter 66, which gets to maybe your second point of, well, how can these developers do that? They're just basically platting it at that point, and this simple lot split really wouldn't apply.
So I'll just add to that. So the concept of the simple lot split is to be a faster, less expensive alternative for an individual homeowner to do exactly what he just described, splitting off a lot so their son or daughter can build a home, and that's all they want to do is split one lot off. A developer who's going to plat the property, that's a much longer, more complicated, expensive process, and they're doing that for a reason, because they're going to sell those lots, and so that's why they're developing many lots all at once. So this is the concept of a simple lot split, is so that an individual property owner can do this, split their property without having to go through that same cost and expense. And I'll just add too that they can't do it again. Now with this modification, they wouldn't be able to do a second simple lot split for at least 10 years, but then after the 10 years.
I know it used to be forever, so.
Right, that's the major change.
Yeah, so if a property owner, 50 acres, splits it in half, son or daughter gets the other half, the son or daughter can't split, right?
10 years. They
10
gotta
years,
wait 10 years.
okay, got it. Okay, great.
I think, right? I'm kidding.
I'll make a motion approving ordinance number 2026-03, amending the administrative subdivision regulations by establishing a 10-year look-back period for administrative simple lot splits, clarifying the review responsibilities of the zoning administrator, and identifying the city council as the final approving authority.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? None being heard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. Motion passes. City Administrator.
Mr. Mayor and Council. Trying to get over here. Before you here this evening is resolution number 2026-41. The declaration of a vacancy of a city council seat and consideration of appointment to that seat. I'd just like to say, Stacy, on behalf of the city staff, our deepest condolences to you and your family. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. So in a situation such as this, the council should pass a resolution number 2026-41, declaring a vacant seat, and the goal should be to fill that seat as soon as possible. And there are many different options for filling that seat, some of which I'm sure you'll be discussing here this evening. The council may appoint any individual who is eligible, bear with me, eligible for election to that office. Generally, to be eligible, a person must be a U.S. citizen, a resident of the city, and at least 21 years old. The council is not obligated to appoint any candidate previously defeated in an election for the office. Matter of fact, Minnesota law is somewhat silent on the appointment process, and thus the city council can decide how it will go about determining persons, the correct persons to appoint. The appointment, should be noted, is a temporary basis appointment and would need to be filled within a permanent election in the future. And this was not a special election. It would not trigger a special election because we have elections coming up here in November. So we have a couple of different options for appointment. You can literally appoint anyone you want. You can wait to appoint someone once an election happens, so that if they won the election, rather than taking office January 1, they can take office immediately. You can essentially, the important thing here is twofold: to declare the vacancy, But then secondly, to have a discussion as far as what you would like to do for an appointment process.
Well, I don't think we should wait till November to find out who the biggest vote getter is, because it leaves that seat vacant much too long. I think, I haven't heard anybody else with interest in filling the seat other than Mrs. Miller. So I think we should give this some serious consideration. She knows a lot of people. She has been to almost every social public event that council has been to. I know she's going through a difficult experience right now, but she is demonstrating strength and professionalism and dedication and commitment to our community already and to residents already. She's got a unique understanding of the responsibilities. She knows the issues, so she's coming in familiar. She doesn't have to research. She doesn't have to go to training. Tim Miller cared deeply about this community. He cared about the residents more than anybody that's been up here that I could see. He researched, and I believe Mrs. Miller should be considered not just because she is his wife, but because of who she is, what she brings to the table. I know they didn't agree on everything, which also makes her a great candidate for this. She understands the community. She understands the importance of the job, the residents, working with others, thoughtful decisions. She's a business owner. And I think this position deserves somebody who will show up, listen, work hard, and put the community first. And I believe Mrs. Miller has those qualities. And I don't think it should really be about her being his wife. I think it should be because she is capable, committed, brilliant, and willing to serve.
Okay, we got to resolve resolution we got to vote on first.
Oh. Whoops.
I'll make a motion to declare a vacancy for resolution 2026-41.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion, second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. It's like, Tim Miller, I consider him a great friend. I've only known him for like 3.5 years, but the guy, he had a heart of gold. He cared about the residents of this city. He cared about the businesses. The guy was just, me and him hit it off really well. We met with a lot of residents together. We worked out a lot of issues, and he was dedicated to this city big time. Fantastic guy. I mean, it's hard for me to even sit here and he's not here, because he just had a big influence on my heart big time. So definitely at the public forum tonight, hearing from Stacy and from Kevin, I agree with what Suzanne says too. I believe we could appoint Stacy to fill Tim's seat until the end of his term. And I believe she'd do a fantastic job. She's a smart gal. And she can be a bully, so can I, but she's fantastic. So I'm hoping the council would consider this, because Tim was a great guy, and he left us way too soon. Thank you.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None heard.
Thank you.
Now we need,
I want to make a motion now to fill the vacancy and appoint Stacy Miller to Tim Miller's seat for the rest of his term.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Well, this puts me in a terrible position no matter what happens here tonight. Either way, I lose. So being by state statute, if it turns out to be a tie, I gotta put the deciding vote. So, with all due respect to Stacy and family and that, I will not follow through with that motion, so that motion fails.
Sad. It's really sad.
What a stupid decision.
Yeah,
So,
What a awful.
I'm making a motion
really sad.
to,
Well, point of order, Mr. Mayor, that motion was made, and so a vote actually does have to
Okay.
be made on that motion.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. So with that said, I'm gonna make a motion for, put Dino Perfetti in to that council seat.
I'll second.
You guys suck, you know that?
He's
We got a
awful.
motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
With me being the appointment guy here, I'm gonna appoint Dino Fassetti as to fill that vacancy till the end of the year. Staff report.
Mr. Mayor, if we can, we'll do an oath of office then.
You wanna do it now or later?
We should do it now.
Okay, do it now. Dino?
Mr. Perfetti, do you want to stand up here and raise your right hand? I, Dino Perfetti. Do hereby solemnly swear. That I support the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of Minnesota. And I will faithfully, justly, and impartially discharge the duties of council member for the city of East Bethel, County of Anoka. County of Anoka. City of East Bethel, County of Anoka. State of Minnesota. To the best of my knowledge and ability. So help me God. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dino. Okay, moving forward, staff report.
Mr. Mayor, in the interest of the time this evening, I just have one note, and that would be that tomorrow is the primary election for everybody, so if you haven't voted yet, some have voted early. We've had some people coming in and a steady flow. But if you haven't voted yet, tomorrow's an important vote. So please do make time. We'll be set up in the senior center over here. We'll process people through quickly and efficiently, and please do set that time aside. Signs will be out identifying polling locations, and it's your civic duty. That's all
It's
I
at the
have, Mr.
fire station and where else?
Our Saviors. Yeah.
Our Saviors. Okay.
Okay, council reports.
I rode around with the fire chief for a night to unite on last Thursday, and we hit 4 different parties on the south side of the city, and they were absolutely wonderful. A lot of great people that invited us in and thanked us for being there. So it's a really great way to get out and meet the residents. I always look forward to night to unite. That's all I have.
I did the seniors night to unite. I was grateful for those who came and a little disappointed in the commission members that did not come. But other than that, the city staff, the other people who came, we totally appreciate it. We had good food and it was very interesting.
I know I'd like to apologize for not being there because I did plan on being there, but my appointments took a lot longer than I expected. I wanted to make it there though. That's all I got.
Yeah, I attended the senior one and I made 8 of the 12. It was hard to make all 12. But
Spent about 5 minutes at each one.
it's a lot of distance, a lot of miles. But it was a fun time enjoying the people and getting their inputs and everything and thanking them for doing it. It's a great time meeting all these people that put these together every year. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.